Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Recollection Step, a Grand Archive TCG podcast, part of the Maindeck podcast family. I'm Dan.
And I'm Taylor. Dan, how have you been lately? What actually, I don't care how you've been.
Yeah.
What have you been playing lately at Locals?
Locals? When was the last time I played in a Locals? I'm assuming you're doing it weekly because you live in a place where there are locals and you work at the store where they're held. So yeah. I mean, you'd think that. I normally do. I'm normally like, especially like prior to Seattle, I was there. I was playing in events, at least playing in one round of events when we had like, we were running events for a little bit. We were running events on Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and then during Revel Fest, players were like, can we have another event on Tuesday, whatever. So we were firing off a bunch of events weekly. And I would, at least when we had just like 3 people show up to one, I would play in the first round to fire it off. But I always played every Saturday and sometimes played a little more on Friday too. Since Seattle, we had Seattle I was judging an event in Denver for Star Wars. And then last weekend, it was like a delayed celebration for my wife's birthday. So I said, I'm not doing anything that weekend. You have me the whole weekend. So I haven't actually gotten to play a game of Grand Archive in a couple of weeks now, unfortunately. And I'm kind of jonesing. It's a little rough. I'm feeling a little bit like light headache, itchy, sweats, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's our store champ event this weekend. So I'm breaking it back out. I have a secret brew. Actually, I don't really have a secret brew, but I'm going to come up with a deck list that I'm going to play tomorrow. And then I'm going to play that on Saturday. And I get to play because we have one of our newer judges offered to judge this one. And I am probably going to crush you all, frankly.
Yeah. Okay.
Just saying.
You somehow corralled this poor kid into judging for us, and you're gonna try and take our enrage that is deservedly of the people and not of you.
Okay, but it's
very,
a Jin
very villainous, villainous arc, Dan.
Who has the most Jin bling in the area?
But this isn't even Jin. This is Lubu.
But it's in Rage. You wouldn't play this. Nobody. Okay. Actually, it'd be really sick if for today's episode, we had a Lubu deck with Exia cards in it, because that would be very fitting for the stuff we're talking about today, but it's not. You're only playing in Rage and Jin decks. Come on now, Taylor.
Yeah, that's fair. Although, yeah, I maybe have something brewing in the back of my mind here. No, I don't. There's no way. I could never justify that at all. It's so hard to make Lubu work. Like it's not going to happen, but as much as I would really like it to, it'll be a fun card to just play around with in general. So yeah, but yeah, I'm excited. I am also heading to Fargo for the Star Champ this weekend. I'm going to play some Fractals. Spoiler alert.
I know you are. You all are going to be playing Fractals. It's going to be
like half the field's going to be Fractals at least. It's going to be great. It's going to be kind of gross.
Yep. Just you wait until my Lubu deck crushes you.
There we go. But I'm like, Mitch is going to play Fractals, I'm sure. I'm going to play Fractals. Tony might get corralled into playing Fractals, although he's been liking Genbu lately. So he might be playing that. Yeah.
Tony's not going to play Luxem?
I think we've done a really good job of talking him out of that. The problem, okay, so here's the thing. And I'm going to give Tony a little shade here, because every single event he's taken Luxem to now, he has like drawn himself out of contention.
This is so fair.
Like and he's been doing this for like actually like months at this point. It's not even like he's been playing Luxem for like a couple weeks and is doing like he's been doing this since like November of last year. He's
always one, or I should say 2 points away from top cutting, because he always has one more draw than he needs to, that he needed to convert to a win that he was unable to. And we keep being like, Tony, you got to play fast if you're going to
play faster. And if you're not going to do it, you can't play Luxem. And he's like,
I think he's been working on it, but it's like,
what? Like, because what? Let me find his record from. Yeah, he only had one loss in the Michigan regionals, which is pretty great. You would think, oh, one loss, you top, no problem. He came in 32nd because he went 3-1-3. So, Tony, this is my intervention for you. We're gonna get you off of Luxem. We're gonna get you onto something that you can play at a more reasonable speed, so you can finish your matches in time and get some nice conversions for yourself.
Yeah. Yep. That makes sense. I expect to see Tony on Fractals or something. You're all just going to play Fractals. I might play Fractals. I don't know. It might just be all Fractals there. Who knows?
I mean, who knows? It probably won't be that bad. Like, because there's we know Mike's not going to play Fractals. We know Alex is not playing Fractals. Yeah, there's probably a couple others that are showing up that are not playing Fractals. So I think it'll be all right. Who knows what Dustin's going to play? That's true.
Wildcard Dustin, who did day 2 Seattle as well on Astra.
Yep.
He might play Astra, actually.
He might play Astra. I think he's kind of off Astra at this point, though. I think he's over it. I'm expecting Fractals.
Oh, he was on Tristan. He's been on Tristan recently.
Yeah, actually. Yes. Yep. So I'm expecting those. I could maybe see him pivoting to Genbu as well, or maybe even Allies. He's played a lot of Allies in the past. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So definitely a wild card. So yeah, I actually don't think it'll be that bad. I mean, there's going to be an over-representation of Fractals, but it won't be too bad.
So Taylor, do you think what our meta is like at our store champs, is that really representative of what we're seeing right now in the current metagame?
No, I don't think so. So we have an abnormal number of Fractals enjoyers in the region, I think.
The Maindeck team in general.
Yeah.
is very high on Fractals still.
I mean, I don't know. We're all just degenerates who love to blow people up with spells for 20 damage, right? That's fun. I really enjoy it, but there's a lot of evidence that there's a lot of players who would prefer to find their wins in other ways. Let's talk a little bit, I guess, about CNATs here, because that happened in between our last recording and now. I think our last podcast came out last week as of this recording, but this will
be out really fast too, actually.
Yes, so this is good. But that was actually after. That was about a week after we recorded, and we recorded before CNATs. So this is actually the first recording we've had since that happened. And CNATs was a big old mid-range fest. It was pretty sweet. That was a lot of fun to watch, by the way. Fractals was the most represented deck, but it was just barely. It was not even a full percentage point over Wind Allies. And then there was a ton of Tristan, a ton of there was still a good amount of Aggro. There was a lot of Luxem and some Genbu. Genbu really, this was kind of the first event where Genbu really started to show up in force and in numbers. So I would say that was pretty nice, diverse meta, and I think this is fairly representative of what has happened in between CNATs and now as well. We've seen a lot more of these events go towards a more of a mid-rangey part of the spectrum, in large part because a lot of those decks actually fight Fractals fairly well. A lot of the aggro decks are starting to find that they can't get under Fractals fast enough, and that's because Fractals has adopted more fast cures than they were playing in Seattle and more Gildises than they were playing in Seattle. Gildis is a ally from Dawn of Ashes, costs 3, cleric ally. That part's not relevant, I guess. It's a 1/3, and then it has balance as long as you have the same number of cards in your hand and memory. Gildis gets +3 power, so she's hitting for a 4/3, and that's actually pretty easy to accomplish when you have a bunch of reservables on the field. And so she's been really beating down aggro decks.
And the benchmark of 4 damage, that's the important thing, because there are so many. I mean, that's the key threshold in the game right now to be able to actually effectively clear allies, because you're talking about decks that are running Ace Protectors or Frostsworn Paladins. Or now we're seeing things taking things like Gildis and using what's its name? The horse. Brisk Windtrotter. Got it.
Yeah.
To put a buff counter onto Gildis to, bring it up to that 4 threshold. And so it's just been critical for these Fractal decks to start running Gildis to be able to actually effectively kind of play a control game on the board, because Gildis can just clean one shot most of those allies and force the opponent to have some sort of interaction to deal with it.
Yep. Yeah, and if they're answering guilds with allies too, then she acts as like a pseudo fast cure because she's just going to eat whatever damage they had to send, which is going to be like 3 or 4 at least. So she's been really powerful and really like stymieing aggro decks in that matchup. But the win decks have had like fairly decent success still into her.
Oh yeah,
and into fractals. Tristan and this Wind Luxem list that I've been running around specifically, the combination of Scatter Essence plus efficient allies plus a strong end game really kind of stymies the fractal plan, especially if they get a couple Scatter Essences onto key pieces before they can play like a Zhongjiao and draw cards. It really slows down what fractals are doing and gives the Wind deck a ton of time to do what they want. And these, I think, are the actual kind of like fractal killers that we were kind of seeing in the like first part of the format. I know the Wind Savory list was supposed to be something similar because you got to play both Expelled Departed and Scatter Essence to really just like +1 when you killed their fractals. But oftentimes that just wasn't enough because you didn't have the pressure to really back up the disruption. Exactly. Whereas Wind Luxem and Tristan both have that.
They have inevitability where often what you're kind of doing when you're messing around with Scatter Essence and stuff against fractals is you aren't stopping them from winning. You are just slowing the game down, slowing the clock down. And if you can't back that up with a reasonable clock of your own, they're still just going to recoup the fractals and come get you later. So that's, I think, one of the key reasons why the main decks that we're seeing successful are Luxem, which has this built-in like, well, I'll get to 3 and then I'm kind of unkillable outside of like a really, really big burst, which I will try to incapacitate, which I'll try to stop, and then I have Lightweaver's combo. Or Tristan, of course, with Shadow Strike, just to close the game out. And, you know, we do see it working remarkably well here in CNETs to the point where I want to point out, you mentioned that even if it was just a percentage point, Fractals was the most played deck at CNETs. The conversion is horrible, though. It's terrible for Fractals. We have one Fractal, and with an incredible record, TTA, running this at a 10-1-2 Swiss record at the end of the event to score one of the coveted, like, TTA's in Worlds now because of this, not Gauntlet, in Worlds. And then the next one down is a 19th place Keen with Water Fractal Ari. And then it's like, there's just nothing, yeah. I'm trying to find the next one actually right now. I was looking at, it's 83rd is the next one, unless I missed something.
No, you missed something. Capen got 52nd. He was.
Oh, I did.
Yep.
Oh, you're right. I did skip by. Okay, Capen at 52nd, but still, there's 52nd, right? Oh,
you missed Slane at 7-4.
Oh my God, I'm 37th. Terrible.
Yeah, you are not.
These all look like Genbus to me.
There's not. So to be fair, there's not a ton. There's the representation went from 18% of day 1 to 11% of day 2, which was a huge drop off. And yeah, I think we had like 5 players in day 2 representing fractals, and that's just so low compared to you had like 40 plus, almost 50 players playing it on day 1. And it's not just top 32 that made day 2, is everybody with a 6-3 record or better. So just like the fractals fell off a cliff. However, TTA played it really, really well. TTA also topped Seattle, did really well there. And they just they cruised into the top 8 here. They secured their world spot, it seems, very, very easily, judging by their record. And then they got high rolled pretty hard by Fire Luxem in the finals. So that was unfortunate to watch. But congratulations to Bob for winning the whole thing as well on Fire Luxem.
Yeah, so, definitely. I will just trust you to look at all the lists from now on, because apparently I have no eyesight whatsoever here trying to look through.
Absolutely wild. Dan's trying so hard to formulate this narrative, guys. Like, he's just pulling out all kinds of misinformation.
You know what? It was a really fun narrative, though, when the next one was at 82nd. That's really cool. Okay, but still, like you said, there really aren't. The conversion was pretty terrible overall still.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm sorry. I did not mean to erase Slane and Kate. Well, Caben, I actually did mean to erase. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, Slane and William, there are a few that my eyes just skipped over entirely. So, regardless though, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of mid-range. It's a lot of, now there is a debate
there's a raging debate in our comments in a previous podcast about whether or not Luxem is a control deck. And by that, I mean, it wasn't Crown. It was, who from Chess Club?
It was Rex.
Rex from Chess Club popped in and just gave his own take on things. So whether or not Luxem is a control deck, that's up to you to decide. I think up to your analysis, your interpretation. I really prefer to call it a very tempo-oriented, in the middle, sort of mid-range, especially with like the slice and dice stuff that the Wind one likes to do.
Yeah. Slice and dice and the rest of the Wind package too, just all the Wind allies and the Asins and stuff is very mid-rangey. They've also they've gotten rid of Gleaming Cuts, I think, out of the main. They might have them side, but they haven't been playing a main, I think, for most of the Wind Luxem lists. It's just been Light Weavers and Luxem Sight. So they've really, really toned back on the Luxem cards and level 3 cards. And really, they just want to play kind of that value-oriented game where in the mid game, all your cards are really hyper efficient. Less so at the early game, less so at the late game. And they just want to own that middle game, which is really strong because cards like Ace and Slice and Dice can win you the game out of nowhere. So,
yeah. So it's a somewhere between a mid range, or maybe there's a couple control decks sneaking in here, depending on your definition. But certainly, we saw in CNATS a pretty solid shift to the metagame in the direction that a lot of players are attempting to approach the Fractal deck. But then we see other events as well where Fractals are still kind of popping off, doing well. And of course, TTA did great here. So I think personally what we're seeing is just a really robust metagame with a lot of options. Do you think that, Taylor?
100%. Yep. Actually, just like we've been, keeping track of what events have been happening. We're preparing for NA Nats at this point, obviously. It's still over a month away, but like still just trying to like make sure you keep track of the metagame so you know where everything is. And know kind of what to target, what decks are good, what decks aren't. You got to keep up on that. So we've been doing that as a team to get ready, and it's just been miserable trying to find like what deck is currently best positioned because there's just too many options and too many ways to attack the format right now that it just feels very like you just roll a die and just see what comes up, and that's just kind of what you take. It feels like I think you can take any of the top decks from CNATS, from any of the regionals that have happened recently, and take them to any event. And as long as you play it well and don't get just horribly, lose a matchup lottery horribly much, you're going to turn out pretty fine.
Yeah. Be experienced at your deck, get lots of reps, play against all of the major decks, prep your sideboard, prep your material deck, guys. We talked about that in the last episode, but that material deck, I'm telling you, that's going to be your key, your salvation here in surviving against a lot of other of the powerful decks in the format. Do not tunnel vision on particular material lines. You got to know how you're responding to the context of any scenario. And that's, I don't think this is a metagame where you can just go, I'm just going to play this deck because it's good and it's the one that wins and that's it. You want to just be good at, experienced at what you're playing with. The no deck is currently like clearly the victor over all the other ones.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly.
But another option that you have to approach one of these major events or minor events,
go to Dan. Maybe send him a comment on a video. Maybe send him like a DM or something on Discord, or can you send DMs on YouTube? I don't know. But what you should do if you want to take a different approach to this metagame is just get a hold of Dan and ask him how you can help support the channel and help support Maindeck. And
great derailing.
Actually, Dan, since we're here already, why don't you tell the audience how they can help us out?
Absolutely. Well, one of the ways you can help us out is if you're enjoying this episode of Recollection Step and you want to support what we do, give a like to the video, comment down below, let me know what you are enjoying or hating about the current metagame, however you're approaching it. Those are always fun comments. We had like everyone who we brought up in the last episode comment down below and say like, hey, that was my comment you talked about. So that's really fun. Always love to have all that interaction. So thank you all so much for doing that. If you're listening on a podcast platform, go ahead and find if there's a way to give a review there somewhere. I know there is. Just find a way to give a review, give a 5-star review. Say Dan and Taylor are literally the best and most attractive people in the world. And that'll obviously help us out a ton too. And then finally,
it's great having really attractive people on an audio-based media.
It's really fun. Yeah, that's, you can tell by the voice sometimes, right? You can just tell that we're attractive people. You just
tell us we have a face for radio, and we'll take that in the right way.
I'll always take that as a compliment. I don't care what it's meant as. Another way you can support us, though, is you can head down to our sponsor, our LGS, jwwcards.com. Link will be down in the description. And you can pick up either pre-orders of the next sets, Distorted Reflections, or we have pre-orders up as well for Mercurial Heart Altar Edition. Maybe you want to pick up that to try and get some like spicy whatever CSRs we're going to get in there. I'm not entirely sure. Or you can pick up our new wallet with artwork by Han Chu, which is still available on the website. It'll be available for a long time, by the way. There's like not a rush, but we really would appreciate it. It would support us a lot if you went and grabbed one to store all of your either your money or your cremation rituals in. I have this really beat up one that I've I can't remember why, but it's just been in my wallet for a while, and there it is. Whatever you do, whatever you buy from JWA Cards, it really does support us as well. It helps us out, helps the shop out. It's good for everyone. And you can get a discount code of 5% with discount code Maindeck. So go ahead and pop that in too. Thank you all so much for your support and all the ways that you do support us.
Yeah. And without that out of the way, we have been digging through these regional lists, trying to find the tech, trying to find the best way to attack the metagame, trying to get whatever edge we can get on our opponents. And what we've found might not be that, but it also might be that, because we found some really, really sweet lists here from a couple of the more recent regionals, a couple from down under, as they say, down in the Elusive Webcam Regional, the Hamilton Regional, and also like kind of the down under of the US, down in the Texas Regional as well.
The down under Texas, the down under of the US.
Exactly. But yeah, we found some pretty spicy things, and they performed fairly well into these fields. All these players walked away with like good records.
They got at least a few wins, which in a difficult field filled with like Burst Asunder decks and stuff is always worth looking at. But mostly these decks are cool. They're fun. They're interesting. And they're all dual elements. We actually have 3 lists we're going to talk about today that are all different combinations of 2 element lists, which is just, you just don't see lists like this very often. And we were debating, talking about like, should we just talk about more like meta decks? And then we saw these like, this is going to be way more fun. Let's just talk about these.
100%. These like, we've been complaining a lot. Complaining is maybe a strong word, but I think in general, like we've been complaining about just how little innovation deck building happens in Grand Archive, and especially like at a high level. And, myself included, I'm very guilty of that. It's like brewing is difficult, guys. Just so, First of all, if anybody out there brewing, shout out to you. Way to kind of continue to innovate in the field and see what's out there. There's a lot of space out there, by the way. This is not Magic the Gathering where we have hundreds of thousands. That's probably not an exaggeration. Hundreds of thousands of players playing online every day. That might be an exaggeration. Somewhere between thousands and hundreds of thousands of players playing online every day.
I think billions or trillions of players.
Yeah. I mean,
trillions.
That's probably what it is. Yeah, there's probably trillions of players, actually. They're online every day. They're generating data. Like all this data is getting published. All these lists are going up and stuff. And you're seeing all these records and everything like that. Like they're actually solving the format just through sheer force of playing a trillion times 2 matches or whatever the math is, right? In Grand Archive, that's absolutely not happening. We are lucky enough to have a few very noble people gathering this data and putting it on websites like Sylvie.gg and Fractal of In.site. And I think there's one other one that is also aggregating events at the moment. I forget what they are, so apologies if you're out there. Feel free to shout yourself out in the comments and get some free publicity that way. But we are lucky enough to have these people putting these gathering this data for us. However, it's still just not actually that much data. And so as locked in as some of these top decks seem, there's likely still things out there that can be improved upon and iterated upon and new angles to attack the format from. So what we want to do is just shout out these players that are coming at the format with these really, really cool and unique and effective lists. We'll start with the elusive webcam regional, the one we found there. A player by the Omnidex ID of LostApple finished at 28th in this event out of 60 some odd players at 222 record, playing a Fortuitous Windmill Nico.
I want to mention just really quick that we'll have the list displayed on the screen for the video podcast. Audio listeners, try to follow along. I'm sorry. It's just going to be, we're probably going to talk about a lot of cards here pretty rapidly. We'll do our best, but we'll have links
up and available.
Yep. Okay. So yeah, explain this list, Taylor, because I actually think this is really cool. I was really
this list is actually really dope. No, this is like kind of the evolution of Nico I want to see moving forward into this like metagame where Watermill is still powerful, but like stymied by Nullifying Lantern. This is a really sweet innovation. So obviously they're starting off with Spirit of Fortuitous Wind, which is really cool to see as well, and just cool to see them having some success with, because a lot of those spirits were derided on their spoilers, just as like giving up your first turn was often claimed as being not worth it for being able to glimpse 7, draw 7. I'm not sure if that's quite true or not, but clearly some people are having some success with them. But they are drawing. Go ahead.
This application of that though is what really when I saw this list I could hear the key turning in the lock in my head. It was like, wait a second. Because the problem with dual element decks is often that you have two disparate set of elements. And if you draw a hand turn 1 with all your, like, for example, in this deck, if you drew a hand and you had a turn 1 to play with all your water cards, you couldn't play anything that turn. And then you thus couldn't level because you can't play anything to get down to be able to go to level 1. This skips it. It says your first turn you play anything, you're just going to turn 1, you're going to put your, you're just going to put your hand down, obviously, and draw into memory and pass. Mm-hmm. And then turn 2, you just level to 2. And now you have both unlocked the first turn you play. So there's nothing that can really go wrong in that sense, which is so cool. And
they took advantage of this too, because they're playing upwards of 20 water cards in the main deck. There's like 26 here or something, which is a lot for an element you cannot play at level 0 on your spirit. But if you're going to be drawing or, glimpsing that many cards, finding some wind cards to play right away, it's not a problem. They are playing a singleton copy of Diablerie, which is awesome. They're playing a singleton copy of Orchestrated Seizure, which is awesome. But then they're just playing like a value game here and just trying to get to Nico level 2 kind of efficiently as they can, while still like putting a little bit of pressure on their opponent and generating card advantage. They're playing some Snow Fairies, some Swift Recruits, some Dream Fairies. Getting to play both Dream Fairy and Snow Fairy is really powerful. I really like that, actually. Like, there's cards that you don't mind having on the field. There's cards you want gone. And so you can take care of it either way you want. They've got Swift Recruits and Windmill Engineers. They're playing Young Peacekeeper in this list, which is really sweet. I think that's an underrated Guardian gem. Like, just imbuing Windmill with like a bunch of water cards in your deck is like pretty funny, but like, and yeah, Young Peacekeeper, I'm sorry I interrupted you there, but like, this card has not been played for a long time. I mean, it would get play in like the Tony Wind ally decks of yesteryear at this point. But it's just one of these float wind cards that's in here. It's Young Peacekeeper, Reclaim, Scatter, Swift, and then you don't get Diablerie, unfortunately. But yeah, you have all those in to kind of create your float package so that you can Ravishing Finale to kill the opponent still. And basically you just do like all of the powerful water stuff that Nico does, except you have the wind engine to generate your sort of card advantage, like Asen your Windmill Engineer back to hand and just keep drawing cards with that instead. Like, this is cool. We had talked a lot about how like a water Vanitas list could be really cool in helping fight fractals, because you get to play Scatter Essence and get floating memory that way. One of the issues with that is that you can't actually play Scatter Essence on your spirit because you're water spirit if you're water Vanny, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you're just not able to play Scatter Essence early enough to affect the Fractal game plan at all. However, with Wind Nico, you can play that on turn 1, kill a Fractal, go to Nico on turn 2, and now all of a sudden you've set the Fractal player back, you've got both your elements unlocked, and your generated value, you're ready to go.
You could do that, but you're playing Fortuitous here. So, but maybe if you ran...
Sure. Yeah, I mean, okay. But you can do this without going to Nico, though, is like really what I'm trying to say, right? Like you turn 1, you're going to get all this stuff. If you're on the play, it doesn't matter.
If you're on the play.
Yeah.
I could see a world where you actually put in the material deck another Wind Spirit, though, like a regular Wind Spirit, so that, I mean, you're taking a gamble then, right? You're not getting that cool advantage of going like, I'm not going to have any issues with my elements. But you could actually, you could even go like Serene Wind if you wanted to.
If you want to be really spicy.
This is spicy, but this means when you have both spirits in your material deck, if you are on the, if you're going second against a Fractal deck, you can choose to materialize like the Serene Spirit, dig to try and find your Scatter Essences so that you can play those and kind of get that sort of like that sort of slow down the game, like you talked about earlier, sort of tempo against the Fractal deck, and then try and win from there. And when you're on the play, when you're taking the first turn, you can still just Fortuitous because it doesn't matter either way.
Yep. Yeah. So you got to do all these sweet win things. And then, of course, like you said, you're still doing all the awesome Nico things. You still got Primordial Ritual. You still have Lost in Thought to draw a bunch of cards. Frostborn Paladin's obviously really good here. And then your Storm of Thorns is at its best in these Water Guardian lists, obviously. And then you've got the sweet, sweet Nico endgame of Ravishing Finale, Magebane Lashes, protecting you with Temptation's Facade. You've got Vapor Jet Shield to stop a lot of damage. You're also playing Art of War to slow down like ally decks as you get set up here with all your Sweetwater cards. So yeah, this list is just very cool. A lot of sweet things going on here.
Let's not forget just how useful Storm of Thorns is right now against Burst Asunder specifically. Because Burst Asunder deals its damage in packets of 2. So the Storm of Thorns one Storm of Thorns brings it down to 1 damage per Fractal plus 1, which they then have to sack all their Fractals to even get that 1. And your opponent, if it doesn't kill you, they're just going to go, no, never mind. So like it basically just blanks all but 1 damage in that case. 2 of them will completely blank everything, and you're still getting that float and setting up for that like Ravishing Finale kill that you're trying to do in here, or all of the, this also is Vapor Jet Shield too, right? You can put out Vapor Jet Shield and have Storm of Thorns, and now Burst Asunder again has to find another route to kill you. So this is, this is cool. I love this. I think this is super, super neat.
Yes. Yep. This is something that I'm definitely gonna be thinking about going forward here. Like there's a lot of play here. There's just so much utility.
Yeah. Shout out to LostApple. Really, really cool deck. I think of the decks we're looking at today, it's the one where I see personally right now, I see the most like competitive potential in this because it really does line up with Taylor, some stuff you and I have talked about in the past about trying to figure out how to approach the meta. And frankly, just Wind and Water since ALC Alter, we've seen the power of Wind and Water decks that are able to just kind of play all of the interaction in the game, whatever pieces of interaction they need. Whereas the other decks we're going to look at, the fire mixed ones, are going to not, fire doesn't bring quite as much diverse interaction to the table in the same way. But it brings explosivity instead. So we can talk about those.
Yes. Yeah. Let's move on to the next one, shall we? So the next one is from the Card Merchant Hamilton Regional in New Zealand. This was piloted by Sean DeSheep 1 to a 2-3 record. And this is Fire, Slice and Dice, Razor Gale, Rebuke, Vanitas.
This is such a good name.
It's a mouthful. There's a lot going on there. But this is sweet. Spirit of Fire into Vanny 1, Vanny 2, and Vanny 3. Running Cleric Robes as just a way to stop a little bit of damage over time.
Cleric Robes.
Running Everflame Staff, getting some extra damage on the material deck that way, because the reason why this is playing fire and not just all wind, you'll notice we said Razor Gale, right? So there's a lot of wind here. The fire cards that they picked out are pretty impactful, I would say. You've got Everflame Staff, you have Cinder Geyser, Clumsy Apprentice, Fractal of Sparks, and also Searing Rebuke. So you've got a couple different things going on there. So Searing Rebuke is just a really strong card, especially out of Clerics, where you get to deal 4 damage for 2 reserve some amount of the time.
Cinder Geyser.
And Cinder Geyser, thank you. Yes.
Yes.
Yep. You get to deal 4 damage for some amount of the time for 2 reserve. Otherwise, it's still just 4 for 4, which is a very reasonable rate at fast speed, especially. Clumsy is obviously pretty awesome for helping you kind of draw cards and put a little bit of extra pressure on the board. And Fractal Sparks, these are all cards we know about that combo really well already with Searing Rebuke that we've seen in the other Fire Aggro decks for Dao-Chan and Arasana.
And I think one of the linchpins of this build is the fact that like Searing Rebuke obviously works with Fractal of Sparks. We've seen the play of like ping yourself with the sparks to make the Rebuke deal 3 damage to them instead. Clumsy, same thing. You can hurt yourself, but under a Rebuke, that actually just hurts your opponent. But the thing that is really cool about this is the fact that Razor Gale Calling says deal 1 damage to target champion. So the play that I think, like what I assume was the inspiration for building the whole rest of this deck, half of this is really wild, but this part is the fact that you can rebuke yourself to turn those Razor Gale pings when you're trying to close the game from 1/1/1 to 3/3/3, that's a cool interaction.
That's a very cool interaction. On top of that, you've got Searing Rebuke dealing that damage. That by itself then is going to trigger Everflame Staff if you've pinged yourself 3 times with Razor Gale, right? You're going to put your I think that only needs 3 counters to trigger.
3 or more. Yes, 3 or more. Yep.
So
for the 4 damage.
So that's a bunch. And then if you're already at Vanitas level 2, you're going to be attacking for a bunch as well. Just between Searing Rebuke, Everflame Staff, and whatever 3 spells you're playing, wind spells you're playing, that's going to be 9 from the Searing Rebuke to your opponent, 4 from the Everflame Staff, and another 5 damage from Vanitas' attack, which will add up to a lot.
A big number.
It adds up to 18 damage.
There we go.
Going at your opponent from that. And if those cards are all Fairy Whispers or like Baby Green Slimes or something, like you're going mostly influence neutral, you're really only committing that Searing Rebuke. Your opponent's kind of in pretty rough shape. And then they're also playing Dominating Strike on top of that. So if you've put more wind cards in your memory in order to play your cards to trigger Razor Gale, you can play that for free as well, dealing an extra 4 damage on top of whatever else you were doing. So you can just burst out a ton of damage out of nowhere with this deck.
You also can burst out damage because let's not forget we said Slice and Dice is in here, right, Taylor? What's going on with this?
This one is a little confusing, but it's pretty sick as well. There's Gear Strider gloves in the material deck, so a lot of people probably are not familiar with this card because there's not a lot.
Who would know this card?
A 0 cost Regalia item. Assassin Gloves. On enter, put a preparation counter on your champion, and then it has class bonus level 2+, obviously, which will never happen here because you're not an assassin. But you banish Gear Starter Gloves. The next reaction card you activate this turn costs 1 less to activate. This is a card that came in the Tristan Recollection deck, and most people just cut it immediately when they went to competitive play. But just getting a prep counter for free for no cost on your material deck is fairly strong still when you're trying to play Slice and Dice. And then there's 4 more copies of Surveil the Winds in the main board and 3 copies of Black Market Broker, which I'll give you a preparation counter, no strings attached when they enter.
It's important to remember that Surveil's class bonus is the fast activation. But in a Razor Gale deck, Surveil is just kind of I'll play this, I'll ping you 1 and I'll draw a card and I'll get a prep counter. And even it's not fast speed, but it can totally set you up to just have like a lethal. If you find a couple of these, your lethal Slice and Dice line is kind of ready to go next turn. You play 2 Surveils, you're at 2 prep. The next turn you just go, okay, Gear Strike Gloves, slice you for 12. Did I win?
Yeah. The Slice and Dice also plays incredibly well with both Vanitas level 1 or level 2 and level 3.
Yeah, exactly. For people trying to do the math at home, that's my 12 was with the, like you go to 3, right, to get the 3 damage from that.
It's 15 with level 3.
It is 3 and then 6, which is 9, and then 3
and 3 because it's 2 attacks.
Oh, you could use this attack. I did my math even worse than it. It's so much better with this level 3. You're right. It's 15.
You have a free Assassin's Ripper essentially at level 3.
I thought I was doing the math right. I was wrong. It's even better. Oh my God. Yeah, that's so cool. That's so funny. Slice and dice on Vanny level 3 is the funniest thing. Oh my God.
It's really good with his level 2 as well. Like if you can just play a couple Fairy Whispers or something beforehand, your Slice and Dice is hitting for however many spells you played beforehand, plus the 1 power, extra each attack there. A lot of sweet things.
We also have Enchaining Gale in here, the 2-cost fast speed cleric spell. Class bonus costs 1 less to activate, so there's just 1 cost. 1 cost suppress target ally. And I was looking at this and like, what are we doing with this exactly? And then I realized the Clumsy Apprentice is what we're doing with this, which is like, okay, we can just play the Chaining Gale for 1 to get a budget Fairy Whispers when we're trying to do Razor Gale shenanigans, because it'll draw a card back. We also have the Blessed Clergy in here, which doesn't work with the suppress, but does work with any other. Actually, do we? No, we don't have a way to bounce.
No, there's no reclaims in here.
There's no reclaims in here with Vanitas. What?
Honestly, I think it's okay. Like there's a lot going on here. Like you maybe would play them over like Shieldmate or something. I don't know. Shieldmate seems pretty decent as a way to like defend yourself while leveling up and getting to the point where you're level 2 and level 3 just combos really well with Slice and Dice.
With no cremation or anything either, though. This is this is a list that feels like there's probably about 85 good cards that you would want to run in here to like create all these really powerful lines. And you have to hone it down. Obviously, in fact, they failed to hone it down to 60. It's at 61.
Oh, it is at 61. Yeah, that's the spicy one of Diablerie there.
That is the spicy one of Diablerie, and that's so funny too, because Diablerie and Vanitas is like, it's float. And there's no creative shocks in here though to pitch it, which is the other thing that you could potentially do. I don't know if 85 might be low. Actually, this is maybe more like a 90 or 100 card.
There's so many cards you want to throw in here. Yep.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I don't envy trying to narrow this down, but I do really appreciate all of the different wild, like crazy damage spike lines that are created in this list.
Well, it's set up really well to like go around whatever defenses your opponent is trying to put up. If they're putting up taunters and Terra Franks and stuff, you throw the Slice and Dices to the side, you get your Searing Rebukes out and your Everflame Staff, you go for that line. If they put their Safeguard Amulet out, they've got Blanches. You're like, whatever, I'm just going to Slice and Dice you, nerd. You get to juke and dodge all their stuff, which is really powerful.
Yeah, this is a cool list. I would love to see like another version of this, like another refinement, maybe testing with a few other lines. I mean, I have no idea. Maybe Shonda Sheep's been like tweaking this for a million years and is like, no, this is version 63 and it is optimized or something. And maybe that's the case. But this is still, in any case, this is really cool. This should be somewhat inspirational to hopefully some of you folks out there who like are trying to find some of these wacky lines to play. Especially like I think Vanitas is one of the stronger champions, and is a really, really fun champion to play as well. And this would be a great excuse to crack out the Vanitas 3 again and toy around with this because it seems really cool.
Yeah, 100%. There's a lot of powerful things going on. I'm hoping to see Shonda Sheep and lots of other players continue to iterate on this one.
Absolutely. Let's go on to our final list. This one is from, as we all know, the down under of the US, Texas. That's my new thing. That's great. I love that. That's
you're welcome. You can have that one for free.
Thank you so much. This is from the Texas HVN Regional at Reaper Game Store. This is Kitsumeow's Fire Aggro Mill Nico. I think this is the first list that I saw that I think made me want to talk about this.
This is the list that inspired today's topic. That is correct.
Yeah, because I saw Fire Aggro Mill Nico and I thought, what the hell is happening here?
Those words do not go together.
I didn't think they do, but looking at this list, so what we have here.
First of all, this is the best performing list we've highlighted so far. They played this to a 4-2 record at this regional. It was like a 60-player regional, and they finished 18th, excuse me. So very respectable finish. for that, especially with a awesome, very crazy brew like this.
Yeah, and what we have here is basically a list that is, from everything I can tell, it's attempting to take a traditional fire aggro strategy, which is obviously to attack your opponent until you win, right? Pretty straightforward, but
very well put down.
Yeah, thank you. That is the kind of concise analysis that you get from main deck. We're doing the Arthur thing. We got 4 Arthur, we got 4 red hair, we got 4 Xiao Qiao. Basically, our list of sort of like, I want to turn on red hair, I want to attack. But there's a couple of sort of interesting directions that Kitsumeow seem to see when they were looking at red hair and Arthur, and what can we do if we run 8 hasty messengers in our deck and 4 creative shocks, and we run Nico instead. So all of this discard is going to fuel, instead of just fueling things like Rending Flames or some passe stuff like that everyone's seen Rending Flames before. It's not exciting anymore. Okay, guys, it's whatever. Good job. You did 18 damage with an attack and destroyed me. I'm not bitter about it. But instead of doing that, we're going to put a bunch of floating memory in the yard. We're going to level to Nico, and then we're just going to Ravishing Finale you. And guess what? I don't care how much health you have at this point. I'm going to either mill you or kill you. It's one of the two.
You can be Tony, and you can be sitting there and have 28 damage on you after this Ravishing Finale, but you're still going to mill 52 then, or 56, excuse me, plus whatever Nico had for lash counters. And good luck surviving that, unless you're playing like the Fire Vanny list and you actually played the 80 cards instead of parsing it down.
See, that was the trick all along. We just bring it up to 80. There's a really cool card in here that has seen almost no real. I mean, I think I've seen like occasionally a couple of copies be tried and a couple things, but Tidal Tirade. This is a really sweet card from this is from AMB, right? Yeah, AMB.
It sure is. Yep.
This is a 2-cost action Guardian/Warrior skill reaction. Fast speed with a class bonus floating memory that says target human ally gets +1 health and gains retort 2 until end of turn. And of course, in this deck, we get to use that on both Xiao Qiao and Arthur. And then I like this too. We got things like Veteran Blazebearer, where I assume they've probably got someone with this at some point, which Veteran Blazebearer often gets played just because it's a 2/3. And sometimes I see people like even on stream, they'll just play it. They won't even mention the taunt. It's like irrelevant because they're just going to attack with it right away. But you can actually like play the Blazebearer and have the taunt up, and like you could tirade and get that like mega retort on the opponent. Or if they try to attack it, it has steadfast, so it can still retaliate with that big retort plus damage. That's all that stuff is like really cool. I like the interactions title, and then otherwise it's just a float that you can pitch. And because we're running water, we back up our other, like, instead of just running dumb 2/3s, we play Frosthorn Paladin, which is like a dumb 2/3, but it's really good instead. And then, we still do Heated Vengeance and Impact Hammer, and we can do Heated Vengeance alongside Magebane Lash for like a ton of damage too. This is all so cool. I love this.
This is the deck that Fire Tony wishes he could be, because you like, and also like other Fire aggro decks, to be honest, like you get to play Impact Hammer, you get to attack with the full 3 since you're a Guardian. You're taking the 3 damage still, but you're Nico, so you have like 25 health, so it doesn't matter.
Yep.
Heated Vengeance obviously still awesome here. Just Diffusive Block is actually kind of goated in a deck with Arthur, where you don't mind throwing a card away to protect him for another turn if that's what it takes, and then the card you throw away has floating memory as well anyway, so it really doesn't matter.
Same with Storm of Thorns. This okay, are you going to try and kill my Arthur with multiple attacks, because it's going to take a lot of them at this point. It's going to
take a lot, and you probably don't have that many allies, because I have an Arthur on the board, so I probably killed something if I didn't make him immortal. Like, there's a lot of sweet things going on. And then Red Hair becoming Hasty Messenger number 5 through 8 for this deck is insane. Very strong. The only other thing I think would be like incredibly cool to see here that I'm not seeing is Blazing Throw.
Absolutely.
You have Impact Hammer and Magebane Lash. Just, you have really good, strong regalia that are going to hit for a lot. And then you can just toss them for 4 more to really finish your opponent off.
I feel like we're running a couple things like Sparkleite and Staggering Strike. in here, which like staggering's really good right now. Don't get me wrong.
Staggering's great. Yes.
It's removing your opponent's prep counters. It destroys Tristan in the early game. And obviously it's still dealing damage to your opponent. It's a true sight. It's, it's great. Sparklight, all just a damage source, but like it pops Spell Shield Astras. It has its own little utility as well. But I can see spots like those, or maybe like the Tidal Tirades or something, depending on how much float because I haven't played this deck, so I haven't felt out like how much do I need float in hand all the time. Those are spots where I could definitely see something like Blazing Throw coming in just to open up those kill lines a little bit more. Because what you're absolutely right, Taylor. Impact Hammer and especially Magebane Lash, they have a lot of durability. Impact having 2 is good already, but Magebane having 4 durability means that there is probably a lot of opening to find a line to get in some attack damage and then go, oh, if I had Blazing Throw, I just win the game now.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, yeah, if you are finding yourself in a meta where like there's no Tristans or like Sparklight's not useful, like Blazing Throw could totally slot in for those slots and just get you across the finish line sometimes.
Or you can sideboard.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. The veteran Blaze Bear plus Tidal Tirade combo is just super cool too. I want to reiterate that one because like Blaze Bear again, like this is a card that Fire Aggro decks have been playing for a minute now. At least like some of the more like mid-rangey ones like Fire Lorraine. They just want the 2/3 for 3 and they want it to be fire so that it feels rendings and stuff. Being able to actually like take advantage of the taunt and then give it steadfast because of the class bonus and then give it retort 2 is just so insane. Like you're killing everything with that. You're killing Asins, you're killing Frosthorns. Gildas will trade with it if it's balanced, which is good until you play like a Storm of Thorns or Diffusive Block, and then your opponent has to cry a little bit more. So it's just really powerful into any deck that's like trying to attack the board.
I'm sure randomly the Tidal Tirade just giving 1 health to Arthur is like, actually I win the game now because you failed to kill Arthur this turn.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So like that alone is like pretty sweet.
There's 10 cards in here which protect Arthur. Like
yeah,
just insane. Like and they do it for value. Like they all have floating memory.
Fire
Aggro wishes crazy. they could do that.
They sure do.
You still get to play Lost in Thought here too, which is awesome, and draw 1 million cards if the game goes late. Like this is there's a lot of really sweet things here. I like this list a lot.
Yeah, I maybe spoke too soon early on. I think this is also, I mean, this I still like. What I like the most about the first list is the interaction and the way that it uses Fortuitous to get through one of the core drawbacks of playing one of these dual element champions with a true dual element deck. And this deck, I still see this issue of your turn 1. If you don't see the fire cards, I could see you having some really clunky turn 1s.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that's going to be the core issue. Like you are dying to open Creative Shock or Arthur every single game. You just want to, those are the 2 cards I think you want to have in your opener always. And if you don't see either, you're going to be like, especially like if your turn 1 is like, all I can play is my Hasty Messenger and I've taken the first turn, so it can't even attack. But like, I have to play it to level because the rest of my hand is water.
Yeah.
That's a little awkward to me, to the point where I would really question again the importance of having that 7th card. Can we put Serene in here so that we can glimpse, so that we can try and find, like, remove those clunky starts and then also randomly gain extra, recover 6 late game when we just are going to try to pull off a Ravishing to win or something. That's reasonable. I would think about that. At least test that.
Yeah. I mean, there's 29 water cards here, right? And so without a way to filter your hand, you're going to have a few clunky starts. That's just how it's going to happen. I think a lot of times if you just draw 7 though, and your only fire card's a Hasty and you're on the play, it's totally fine to just pass, not play anything, let your opponent do whatever. And then on your turn, you get a backup charger, you play a Hasty, you discard Floating Memory, you go to level 1 for free, essentially. You're in a pretty good spot at that point.
It's just unfortunate that your turn 1 is blank, though. I mean, like turn 1
absolutely.
being blank it's a pretty big tempo loss, and when a deck is trying to be aggro, it really, I think, like if you're sitting down against your opponent who is playing a quote unquote aggro deck and they skip turn 1, you kind of go, I think this was a free game, at least early on. Like maybe this, but this deck has some explosive lines, so like maybe it's not.
I don't know if aggro is a good actually label for this deck. It feels very mid-rangey to me, actually. Like these cards, a lot of them are not super efficient on turn 1. The most efficient play you have on turn 1 here is Arthur and like maybe Creative Shock, right? But your Hasty Messenger is fine on turn 1, but that's really more of a value card. Like aggro decks are not playing Hasty Messenger for the most part right now. Even Zhao Kao is, I mean, not a terribly efficient ally ever in the game because it's a 1/2 for 3.
It turns on 1 though. That's the whole point.
It's a 2. It's a 1/2 for 2. Excuse me. Yeah. So that's pretty good. But yeah, it turns on Red Hair, which is obviously like super, super insane, right? But again, like you just need a little bit of extra setup to turn Red Hair on in that case. And she just kind of hangs out and wants to get, like, she needs to stick around for a few turns before she gets any real value and damage anyway. Unless you have Red Hair. But otherwise, like it takes 3 turns to get 3 damage out of her, which is not a good rate for an aggro card. The most aggressive thing out of this deck is a Impact Hammer into a Heated Vengeance, and that's it, right? I would say this is like much more of a mid-range game, especially because like you're going to be sitting there taking trades with your opponent with things like Diffusive Block and Storm of Thorns and Tidal Tirade. You're happy to just go back and forth a few turns. You're going to have like spots where you can get aggressive because your opponent can't answer what you're doing because you're playing 3/4 allies and 3/3 allies and Arthurs. But at the same time, you can play a longer game pretty effectively here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's maybe a little insightful here, Taylor. Not that that's unusual for you, but I think that's a good point. That's a good point to make. That it does. I mean, it has combinations of cards that are certainly used in aggro decks, but the amount the deck is leaning on interaction with the board, and specifically with the units you play, rather than just saying, okay, it's fine, it did its damage, I don't care anymore, really does make it feel like it hits more of that sort of mid-range camp where it's gonna have more games where it needs to take a controlling role rather than attempting to race. I just think it has a very explosive racing potential as well. And I think you could tweak the deck in different directions if you wanted to as well.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, there's a lot of room to like mess around with cards and figure out what you want to play or not. Actually, to bring it back to Magic, because we have to do this every episode, but like this is a very blue-red Delver deck for people familiar with that archetype and that era of Magic, right? Like you're sticking a couple threats and you're playing some interaction to protect them, and those threats you're hoping will take you to victory. And your opponent probably can't continue to like answer all these things all the time, especially through all this interaction.
Yeah, it does kind of fit that. I thought you were going to say this would be a great candidate for the podcast that you want to do that we're never actually going to record.
No, we're going to record it. I don't know if this would be a good. This would be fine for it, but I don't have a good like deck to go up against it to really flesh out the example. I have 2 in mind currently for this podcast, and we are going to do it soon. Otherwise, these decks will become slightly irrelevant and harder for people to place. So my plan is to get this on the books before Worlds happens.
This might be the next episode.
Yeah, if we can find a lull in the Nats schedule and things like that to get this recorded, that's when we're going to do it. I almost did it tonight, but we had enough stuff to talk about from CNATs and these cool lists. So
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is a really sweet list. Very cool. Aggro, midrange, whatever you want to call it. Like another sweet list that is actually like taking advantage of Nico's ability to have some really powerful late game plays, but just switch its like early game up. Both this and the wind list, actually, the wind, water, Nico list. You've traded like your Sylvie kind of water starts for these fire or wind starts that have pros and cons over each of them, which I think is a really cool way to take these decks.
This was actually like internally when we were discussing back in the Watermill meta, we were trying to figure out like which Watermill variants were best. We discussed how Guardian we didn't like the straight water Nico lines for Mill because Guardian's level 1 plays were terrible compared to Sylvie's. Sylvie has like insanely good early game plays. Guardian only had like really good late game plays or ways to protect things, but all of Guardian's stuff to protect sucked. Just not like, it was all like just lame.
You're like you're protecting like a Vapor Jet Shield Bearer, which is
or,
like
or less than 1/4. Actually, that's I think he's like 1/3.
1/3, yeah.
However, in this deck, you're protecting Arthur and Red Hair and Hasty and stuff, and that's like, yeah, okay, I will definitely do that. That sounds great.
Very, very impactful cards. Yes. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Really cool. Really cool innovation, Kitsumeow. Really cool innovation from everyone today. Honestly, I know we talked up a couple of the lists a little more than the one in the middle, but I love the title of Fire, Slice, and Dice Racer Rebuke Vanitas. It's so funny. But I think all of these really showed what you started off talking about, Taylor, this idea that brewing's really hard. Okay, it really is. But these players all found really interesting ways to find interactions between cards in the game that people weren't exploring very much. And then were, I think, to varying degrees of success, obviously, from the results. You know, none of these were like top 8, you know, whatever lists. They were all a little farther down, but they all had wins against the metagame. They all had wins and ties, usually. And they were all approaching it from a totally different perspective that is worth looking at, that is worth learning from, that is worth exploring as well. So shout out to everyone who we talked about here with your really cool lists. Love it. Keep it up. And love the audience to just get in here as well. Let us know what you think about these lists. Certainly down in the comments, and sleeve them up. Start exploring. Start trying this stuff out. This is so cool. I love it.
Yes, 100%. I hate to say it, this has not inspired me to not take Fractals to the Store Championship because that deck is just too much fun. But I will definitely be playing around with like these Nico lists specifically. This Fire Water one is one that has my eye, and that I'll be looking at. So yeah, like Dan said, like Dad.
That's fine too. That's appropriate also.
But you're team mom, not team dad is the problem.
Oh yeah, true.
So
fair.
Anyway, we'll leave it at that. If you guys want to comment down below, like Dan said, feel free to do it. If you got any other sweet ideas you want to highlight or shout out or get some feedback on, bring them into the main deck Discord, whatever. Other than that, thank you very much for listening. This has been the Recollection Step, and we will catch you in the next episode.
Bye, everyone.